What if the most efficient irrigation system ever created needed to be filled only once a week? No electricity, no timers, no hoses, no daily labor. Just a clay pot buried in the ground. 2,000 years ago, farmers across deserts and empires used a method so effective it could keep crops alive through brutal droughts with almost no effort. It spread across continents. It sustained civilizations. And then, it quietly disappeared. Not because it failed, but because it was too simple. Welcome to Forbidden Harvest. Long before drip lines, sprinklers, and irrigation controllers, ancient farmers relied on something radically low-tech. They buried unglazed clay jars in the soil and filled them with water. That was it. No moving parts, no infrastructure, no daily routine. These vessels released moisture directly into the ground, slowly and invisibly, but only when the surrounding soil became dry. When the soil was already moist, the water stopped flowing. The system didn't run on schedules. It didn't depend on human judgment. It responded to the actual condition of the earth. The soil decided. To modernize, the method looks almost too simple to be effective. But to the farmers who depended on it, simplicity was the point. In environments where water was scarce and labor was limited, reliability mattered more than complexity. Historical agricultural texts from ancient China described this technique in precise terms, outlining spacing, vessel size, and placement. But China wasn't unique. Across Persia and the Middle East, variations of the same method appeared in regions where irrigation determined whether a settlement survived or vanished. Archaeological findings suggest buried irrigation vessels were used in North Africa and throughout Mediterranean drylands. On the other side of the world, indigenous farmers in the deserts of the American Southwest developed similar systems, adapting them to sandy soils and extreme heat. In these climates, surface watering wasted precious resources. Water had to go underground, directly to the roots. This wasn't an experimental trick or a niche technique. In many arid regions, it became standard agricultural practice, a dependable, low-maintenance way to keep crops alive through long, dry periods. Farmers didn't need to understand the physics behind it. They only needed to see the results. Crops survived harsh seasons, water lasted longer, labor demands dropped dramatically. A field could be sustained by vessels that required attention only once every several days, sometimes even less. Over generations, the system proved itself again and again, quietly, consistently, reliably. For centuries, buried clay irrigation remained one of the most dependable watering methods on Earth. Not because it was advanced, but because it worked, which makes its disappearance from modern conversation even more curious. If a method is simple, cheap, durable, and effective, why does it fade from common use? And more importantly, why does almost no one talk about it today?
How it works. The secret isn't magic, it's physics. Unglazed clay is porous. At a microscopic level, the walls of a clay vessel are filled with tiny channels and air pockets formed during firing. Those channels allow water to move through the material slowly, almost imperceptibly, from the inside of the pot into the surrounding soil. When a pot is buried and filled with water, it becomes part of the soil's moisture system, not an external tool, an extension of the ground itself. The key force at work is soil moisture tension. Dry soil creates a kind of suction. It pulls water toward itself, molecule by molecule. Moist soil relaxes that pull. So when the ground around the pot dries out, it begins drawing water through the clay walls. When the soil becomes adequately moist, the pressure equalizes and the movement slows. If rainfall saturates the area, the flow can stop entirely until the soil dries again. Nothing needs to be adjusted. Nothing needs to be programmed. The pot doesn't release water on a timer. It releases water on demand. That's what makes the system self-regulating. It responds not to human schedules, but to the actual condition of the soil at any given moment, hour by hour, day by day. Plants quickly adapt to this hidden reservoir. Within days, fine roots begin growing toward the source of consistent moisture. Over time, those roots form a dense network around the outer surface of the clay, effectively creating a living interface between plant and vessel. Instead of being watered from above, the plant draws what it needs from below. This changes the entire dynamic of irrigation. Surface watering often floods the soil, then allows it to dry out completely before the next cycle. That fluctuation can stress roots and encourage shallow growth. Buried clay systems provide steady access to moisture exactly where roots develop best, beneath the surface. The soil stays relatively dry on top, which reduces evaporation and discourages weed germination. Below ground, however, conditions remain stable and consistent. There's no standing water, no pooling, no wasted runoff. Every drop moves slowly into the root zone where it can actually be used. Because the system reacts continuously to real-time soil conditions, it becomes incredibly efficient. Hot day, the soil dries faster and the flow increases slightly. Cool weather, the soil retains moisture longer and the flow slows. Rainstorm, the system pauses without intervention. It is, in many ways, one of the most responsive irrigation methods ever developed, a feedback loop created entirely by natural forces. No sensors, no batteries, no electronics. Just a porous vessel buried in the ground, working with physics instead of against it.
Why it faded away? By the mid-20th century, agriculture began shifting toward modern irrigation technologies. Drip systems, sprinklers, timers, pressure regulators, all genuinely useful innovations. They allowed large-scale farms to irrigate massive areas with precision. But they also introduced something new: ongoing maintenance. Pipes wear out, emitters clog, components need replacement. Modern systems are effective, but they are also complex and continuous. The buried clay method, on the other hand, has a different problem. You buy it once, you bury it once, and it keeps working. It doesn't require replacement parts. It doesn't generate recurring costs. It doesn't need electricity. For large industrial agriculture, it's impractical at scale. For small growers, home gardens, and dry regions, it can be incredibly effective. Over time, as agriculture modernized, the clay jar system was gradually reframed as an old technique from the past. Interesting, but outdated. Not erased, just forgotten. How to use it today? Recreating this system is almost absurdly simple. You need an unglazed clay pot, the kind that breathes. Glazed ceramics won't work. Seal the drainage hole at the bottom. Bury the pot so the neck sits just above the soil surface. Fill it with water. Cover the opening to reduce evaporation. Then plant around it. That's the entire system. As the soil dries, water seeps out slowly through the clay walls. As the soil becomes moist again, the flow slows down. Check it every few days, refill when needed. No schedules, no guesswork, no daily watering routine. Just a buried vessel quietly doing its job. The bigger idea. This isn't just a gardening trick. It's a reminder that not all powerful technology is new. Some of the most efficient solutions are ancient, simple, and easy to overlook. The buried clay pot doesn't compete with industrial irrigation systems. It doesn't need to. It exists in a different category entirely, one built on simplicity, resilience, and minimal intervention. In a world that often assumes more complexity means more progress, this method offers a different perspective. Sometimes the most effective systems are the ones that work quietly, without constant attention. And sometimes the tools we need have been around for thousands of years, waiting to be rediscovered. Forbidden harvest. Technologies like this don't disappear because they stop working. They disappear because people stop talking about them. Forbidden harvest is dedicated to uncovering the agricultural knowledge that history left behind. If you're interested in forgotten growing systems, resilient food methods, and low-tech solutions that still work today, subscribe to Forbidden Harvest, because the future of food might be buried in the past, and there are more forgotten harvests to uncover.